Okay, good afternoon, everyone. We will get started now. So as you know, this is an information session for the Rhodes Scholarship for 2021, and we're lucky enough to be joined by Professor Stan Hearn today, who is the State Secretary for Queensland Rhodes Scholarship. I'll pass over to him now.
Thanks very much, Carly. I'm going to try and share my screen now so that I can talk my way through a couple of slides. So can everyone see my slides? Is my desktop sharing properly? Carly, can you just give me a...
Yes, we can hear you and we can see the slides. Thank you.
Okay, awesome. Thanks very much. All right. My name's Stan Hearn. I'm a professor of econometrics in the QUT Business School. So I guess before I get going with talking through the slides, I should acknowledge the Turrbal and Yagara people, the First Nation owners of the land on which QUT stands, and pay respects to their elders' laws and customs, and acknowledge that the lands where QUT stands have always been places of learning and scholarship. So I was a Rhodes Scholar in 1983, which is so long ago now that I can't even remember it. But it's amazing. The scholarships are the oldest and the most prestigious scholarships in the world. What I'm going to talk about today is just give you a brief background in terms of the key contacts, which is really important going forward for anyone that wants to put in an application. And I'll talk briefly about eligibility. And please note that the rules for eligibility have changed this year. So if you've been looking at past variations of these slides, then take note that some of the eligibility criteria have changed. And there's so few of us, I guess, that maybe the most interesting part of this could be a question and answer session when I've gone through the slides. Okay, so in terms of contacts, there are two important contacts, namely myself and the state administrator, who's Sonia Betros. You can get hold of Sonia through the Rhodes Queensland at QUT email, and you can also access the QUT Rhodes Scholarships websites. So those are two really good resources that you should consult. And I'll give you a couple of other websites to look at in the last slide. Alternatively, you can email me directly just using my QUT email address, which is s.hearn@qut.edu.au. Okay, so as I said, the scholarships are the oldest and most prestigious scholarships in the world. They were established in 1903. And the great thing about them is that if you are elected, you become a member of a worldwide family. 9 Australian scholars each year, 1 from each state, and then three that are known as Australia at Large scholarships. So the way in which that works is that we elect the Queensland Rhodes Scholar first, and if there are any runner-ups in that selection process that we think are close enough, we send them to the Australia at Large selection panel. And you would also join a community of nearly 8,000 Rhodes Scholars worldwide, and that community is becoming incredibly active at the moment and trying to become involved in good causes all over the world. This year's Rhodes Scholar, who will be starting hopefully in September, is Nick Salmon, who's pictured here. So Nick is an engineer from UQ, and he'll be going to Oxford to do a doctorate in trying to find ways of producing ammonia in a green way. QUT just recently has had quite a lot of success in terms of Rhodes Scholars. Since 1998, we've had 8. And we had a really good run between 2011 and 2016, but just recently we've dropped off a little bit. So I hope that some of you that are here today will think about applying and getting us back on trend. We had pictured here, we have Brodie Foy and Harriet Horsfall, who are the 2015 and 2016 Queensland Rhodes Scholars. Okay, so here is the most important thing. This is the slide about eligibility. So, you need to be an Australian citizen or permanent resident. There's a resident missing there. So this is new. Previously, you had to be an Australian citizen, but now you can be a citizen or a permanent resident. And you must have completed at least 2 years of schooling at an Australian secondary school. So those are the major place eligibility criteria. And so the Rhodes Scholarship prides itself on being related to a specific place in Australia and Queensland. And you need to be, therefore, an Australian citizen or permanent resident and gone to school for 2 years at secondary school in Australia. This is new. The second eligibility criterion is also new in the sense that we've relaxed the requirement that you do an honours degree as an eligibility criterion. So you need now to have completed an Australian bachelor's degree with or without honours, or an Australian master's degree or international equivalent by the 30th of June 2021 to be eligible. I'll come back to the with or without honours thing on the next slide. In terms of age, the standard criterion is that you need to be older than 18 and you need to be younger than 26 when you take up your scholarship. But we've added another rider to that, recognizing that a lot of people actually don't have a traditional path anymore into the degree and may have an interrupted first degree. We now allow you to apply if you have not passed your 27th birthday and if your first undergraduate degree was awarded on or after the 1st of July 2019. And the star that we see there is just to clarify that when you receive your degree is a matter of university policy. So the university will actually confirm exactly when you receive your degree, and if there is any ambiguity as to whether you meet the criteria or not, then we would seek a ruling from the National Secretary, and that would be the way in which that is dealt with. The other thing that you need to be aware of is that you can apply for a Rhodes Scholarship, but you can only apply twice. So, and you need to apply in the same jurisdiction. So if you believe that you're eligible for the Queensland Rhodes Scholarship, you can apply twice, but you need to apply in Queensland. If you applied in Queensland the first time, the second time has to be in the same jurisdiction. Okay, so there are quite a few changes there to the eligibility criterion, aimed at mainly trying to just loosen the eligibility criteria slightly, both in terms of a permanent residency and in terms of age, recognizing that many people don't have a smooth path to their first degree. Okay, so what are the selection criteria? And this is where I'm going to come back to the with or without honours thing. So the most important criterion is academic excellence, and an indicative expectation is a GPA of 6.75 out of 7, or a weighted average mark of at least 80%. Most importantly, Oxford is getting very, very difficult to get into, and so you need to check that your results actually meet the entry requirements for your proposed course. So I've just been actually exchanging emails with someone from another university who was interested in applying and found that they did not, in fact, have an honours degree. So although that did not disqualify them from applying, turned out the course that they wanted to do in Oxford required that they have a honours degree. And so they really had to readjust their thinking in terms of the course that they'd want to do at Oxford, because Oxford stated quite clearly in their entry requirements that they required a 4-year honours degree. So whilst the honours is no longer an eligibility criterion, you do need to make sure that your academic credentials satisfy the entry requirements for Oxford. And also, you need to take into account the fact that although, even if you are elected as a Rhodes Scholar, the scholarship is not confirmed until you have been accepted by an Oxford college. Okay, what sets Rhodes aside from many of the other scholarships, though, is that it's not just academic excellence, which the selection committee is looking for. The scholarship was established in terms of the will of Cecil Rhodes, and he was particularly interested in trying to select people who had energy to use their talents to the full, and also a devotion to duty, and a moral force of character in terms of demonstrated leadership. So all of these selection criteria are examined very carefully by the selection committee. And something that I need to stress with you is that it needs to be a sustained devotion to duty, or sustained commitment to extracurricular activities. We're very concerned about people just engaging in CV padding by putting something in which they've relatively recently adopted merely to satisfy one or two of these criteria. So it has to be a genuine service to the community, commitment to an extracurricular activity. The pursuit of excellence is really what the Rhodes is about. Okay, so as you can imagine, we're all a little bit in a tiz about the COVID-19 situation and how the application is going to run this year. Applications are all online and submitted through the website, whose URL you can see there. And you see that this is going to happen in July and September, and the shortlisting and election normally happens in October. The one thing which may be different this year, and that is we might have to do the selection process digitally through something like a Zoom meeting like this, or perhaps some other platform. Rhodes House has told us that they are very keen to ensure that if at any one of the constituencies that elect Rhodes Scholars use a digital platform to do the election, then for fairness, everybody should do it. So although countries are at different stages of the COVID cycle, and Australia in particular seems now to be coming to a situation where we're relaxing restrictions, it may very well be that this is not the case in other Rhodes constituencies, and so it might be that we have to run things digitally this year. But obviously, this will become clearer as we move through the election cycle. In terms of your application, there are two important parts: a CV of no more than three A4 pages in length, and a personal statement. Okay, the personal statement is really important, and you should speak with your own distinctive voice. And where, although you can seek advice from a network advisor, a Rhodes network advisor, in very broad terms, the personal statement must be your own work. Okay, and you should address things like how you, where you come from, where you think you're going, how the Oxford course that you choose is going to fit with how you see your future. 5 referees is quite a big ask, 3 academic and 2 other. One thing I should stress is that you should know your referees, but they shouldn't be close family. A lot of people make the mistake of going for very eminent people to act as referees, but the eminent people don't know the applicant at all, and you can see that in the referees. So make sure that you choose your referees very, very carefully. And also make sure that you don't choose any more than 5 referees. 5 is what you're allowed. What does the scholarship entail? Well, it's incredibly generous. The scholarship covers all university and college fees. And it also gives you a personal stipend, which used to be great in the pre-COVID days, because you could use the personal, and you encouraged to use the personal stipend to travel. And travel in Europe is relatively easy and cheap. And so as a Rhodes Scholar, you're in an incredibly privileged position to spend some of your holidays traveling in Europe. I'm not sure how that will play out in the next couple of years, but believe me, the stipend is very, very generous. But you also get given private health insurance and airfares to and from Oxford. Note that you can't defer the scholarship, and you can't hold the scholarship with any other scholarship. And the one other thing which I need to emphasize is that while you're at Oxford, you'll be required to engage with other scholars through the Rhodes Service and Leadership Program. And the center of this kind of community is Rhodes House, which is right in the center of Oxford. And the current warden is very, very keen on getting scholars together and getting them to experience the whole community of scholars through the Rhodes House, through the medium of Rhodes House. Okay, some simple frequently asked questions, which maybe I can give you some answers to. So if you did say, if you're studying abroad at an American college, are you eligible? Yes, you are, so long as you are an Australian citizen and so long as you did 2 years schooling in high school in Australia. Can someone be eligible for the scholarship if their 26th birthday is in the same year that they would commence at Oxford? Yes, they can, so long as they're not 26 by the 1st of October in the year in which you take up your scholarship. Grades, well, grades are very important. So you need to think very carefully about your grades and also about whether or not you satisfy the Oxford entry criteria. In terms of studying overseas, well, this is an interesting one at the moment. Generally, you would have to attend the interview if you were studying overseas at your own expense. The date would be in October, but as I said, this year everything's up in the air because of the potential for having to do the whole process digitally. So this question is probably not as relevant now as it was last year. And the last question, no, you can't list more than 5 referees. It's 5 and 5 only, and you should think very carefully about the referees. The referees are a really important part of the application, and a bit of time spent thinking about who to ask is time well spent. Okay, so some other websites that I promised you. The Queensland Rhodes Scholarship page is run by QUT and administered by Sonia Betros, and you can find it there. The Rhodes Scholarships in Australia, they have a page which is part of the Rhodes House page. So if you go to rhodeshouse.ox.ac.uk, you'll find a lot of information there, and there's information for candidates under the Australia tab there. And then, of course, there is the application for the Rhodes Scholarships, which must be through the website. And then finally, if you need any information before that, feel free to contact the Rhodes Queensland email, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. Okay, well, I think that's about all the only formal presentation, which a part of the presentation which I have for you today. So perhaps if I stop sharing my screen, then we could take some questions if anyone's interested.
So feel free to either unmute your mic or pop a question in the chat and we can read it out for you.
Hi, Stan. If I could just ask a question about the scholarships.
Sure.
So you said that you can't have scholarships with the Rhodes Scholarship but does that include college-specific scholarships?
Yes, I can't recall any. I can't recall any instances in which the colleges offered scholarships to Rhodes scholars. So some of the colleges have what they call exhibitions and other scholarships, which are small grants to members of the college. But I don't recall that any of those were held, were given to Rhodes scholarships. I'm not sure about the situation. So colleges do have travel grants and things like that, where if you want to go and study aspects of, you know, the archaeology of Machu Picchu, and you apply to the college for a small travel grant, I'm not sure that doesn't count as being an actual scholarship. But if it were an exhibition, a formal college exhibition or scholarship to contribute to your fees or living expenses, no, that wouldn't. That would count as being a scholarship, and that wouldn't be allowed.
Okay, thank you so much.
So we have a question in the chat. I'll just read it out for everyone. I may be going off on a tangent here, but I am an international student and am only eligible for the global scholarships. Are there any major differences between that application process and this one?
No, I don't believe so. I believe that the global scholarships process is very similar. But I can check up on that, and if you want to send me an email, I can confirm that for you in a private email exchange.
Great. Our next question: if I applied for a scholarship in Queensland, was unsuccessful, and I did another degree in another state or country, and then wanted to apply again, would I still be able to apply as a Queensland applicant?
Yes. Essentially, if you qualify for a scholarship in more than one jurisdiction, you basically need to think about which of these jurisdictions you feel most attached to, and then make that application in that jurisdiction. Having made that decision, then you would continue to apply in that jurisdiction next time.
Are the four main criteria points that you assess viewed equally, or is academic excellence weighted higher than the others, i.e. devotion to duty, demonstrated leadership?
I think once it gets to the shortlisting process and the actual election, then all of these things are taken into account equally. Obviously, academic excellence is, and the belief that you could actually gain entrance to Oxford is a cutoff point. So no matter how good all those other points are, if your academic criteria are not good enough, that the committee believes that you would be accepted into Oxford, then obviously you're not going to be shortlisted. So it's a kind of, once you pass the hurdle, then all four criteria are addressed equally.
Max says, hi Stan, I'm studying an economics law dual degree at QUT, and the Oxford PPE greatly interests me. Would the overlap between economics in both degrees mean this would not be looked upon favourably?
Look, I think economics at QUT is in the business faculty. Traditionally, economics is a social science. So the actual economics which you do at QUT is a very, very small subset of what economics is as a discipline. And you would see, if you looked at the Oxford PPE, you'd see that the breadth of economics in PPE is absolutely huge. So there would be very little overlap between economics that you would be able to do at Oxford and the economics which you did at QUT. And I think the point is not whether there is any overlap or not. I think the real point you have to answer is, where does the PPE fit with where you see yourself going next? So doing a second BA is allowable in terms of the scholarship. So what you really need to think about is not whether you can do the second BA, you can, and you can apply. What you need to think of is, what are you going to use this second BA for? How is it going to contribute to you as an individual, and how is that going to give you a leg up in what you're pursuing?
Okay, were there any other questions?
So if you don't want to, if you would like to email your questions and have an email exchange with me, you could either send the email to the Rhodes Scholarship one at QUT, or to my own private email, which is just s.hearn@qut.edu.au. And I'll be happy to chat to you about any of the concerns that you have.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Stan, and thank you for the information.
No problems. I really hope to see a number of applicants from QUT this year.
And thank you everyone for coming.